Let's talk about creative direction in political and social impact campaigns, shall we?
Let's go.
So what is creative direction? Essentially, it's a 30,000-foot view of how your campaign will tell its story visually. It's this culmination of branding, which is how people talk about you or speak about you, and the visual identity of your campaign. It's how you want people to feel. It's how you want people to react. It's what you want people to see on screen or on an ad or within a piece of graphic design. Now, creative direction can happen within a single piece of content, whether that's a video, a static image, a reel, whatever that is, or it could happen within a broader campaign. So a series of videos, a carousel if you're gonna speak in social media terms, or an overall sort of like blanket campaign if you're gonna be hitting all of the billboards and everything like that. You want everything to kind of look and feel the same. That's what creative direction is. And typically this is the job of, you guessed it, a creative director. Now for you scrappy campaigns or those who don't have a creative director on staff, this video is for you. Or if you're a creative director, you really want to just polish up on a few things, check it out, have lots of tips coming your way. With that, this is a list of 10 things you can do to elevate your campaign for branding, consistency, and to tell a bigger narrative about your cause. All right, so the first tip is understanding the campaign and discovery, essentially. We want to understand everything there is to know about our candidate or a cause. So what's the personality? What's the values? What's the platform we're going to be running on? What is the sort of overall vibe you want to put out into the world? You can get this by really asking a bunch of really basic questions and then recording those questions, those answers, and putting into some sort of creative brief. So if you are familiar with any sort of basic journalism questions, it's the who, the what, the when, the why. It's the how. How do you want to be portrayed? How do you want this campaign to feel? What do you want people to feel? What are our main goals here? Here's a quick example. Let's just say candidate A is from Texas. Wears a cowboy hat, and he simply does not give a crap about politicians, and he wants to fix that. I'm sure you all have seen people like this. Candidate B is from Minnesota. She works in corporate as a CEO and now wants to bring her business savvy to the political world. Now you can see from these two different examples how we can start playing off of their personalities, their tone, how they dress, their visual vibe, and how we want to put them into the world. Understanding these things, writing them down, and using them will help inform our visuals and will lead us into our second tip, and that is knowing your audience. And this can range depending on your goals. It can be by location, it can be by race, it can be by ethnicity and other sorts of demographics like age, sex, religion, that sort of stuff. Really getting to know that audience is key to your messaging and is key to your visuals. It will have an effect on how we present it visually. Let's go back to candidate A. We know he's a tough guy. He probably hits pretty good with the male demographic, especially white male demographic. But if we want him to appeal to, say, Gen Z females, we may want to soften his visuals and his sort of approach on camera slightly on any given piece of content or campaign. Maybe even create a commercial of him, let's say with his Gen Z daughter doing something together, maybe fishing or doing some girl dad stuff, right? So it doesn't have to be for the entire campaign. It can just be for individual pieces of content that really portray sort of a softer, more gentler side for a Gen Z audience. Not only is he tough, but he's also a girl dad and he's sweet. So knowing your audience is important to how you're going to approach visuals and your creative direction. All right, tip number 3 is consistency. And what do I mean by consistency? You don't want to be changing things up all the time. Stop changing fonts, stop changing colors, stop changing how you shoot the video, right? You don't want to keep changing things up because it does two things. First of all, it'll confuse your audience. If I'm scrolling on social media or watching TV or whatever, and one week you have a certain look and feel, and I've gotten used to that, and all of a sudden you change that up, well, now I'm confused and I'm starting to feel like you're a different person because frankly, you come across that way. It's just confusing and you don't want to confuse anybody. You want people to really know who you are when they first see you and carry that all throughout your campaign. And the second reason is more of a practical reason. It's a pain in the butt to always change your creative up, especially for whoever you are hiring to do this stuff for, whether it's a graphic designer or video person, to always change up the way it looks and feels. It's like you're reinventing the wheel every single time. So if you were to stick with something right off the bat, it just kind of makes things more seamless and systematizes things as you go, so you can create creative faster as the campaign progresses. All right, tip number 4 is to leverage emotion. And how do we leverage emotion in our campaign? Just remember to always be real, be raw, or another buzzword would be authentic. Humans connect with other humans. They always have, and they always will. If you can really leverage emotion and authenticity in your campaign, really dive into people's emotions with real stories of change, of inspiration, hope. People connect with stories, people connect with emotion. And it doesn't have to always be polished. Let your visuals come alongside those emotions, but don't let them overpower the emotions. As you can tell, these are kind of stacking right now because our next tip is about incorporating storytelling. Do you want one surefire way to capture attention and keep it? It's storytelling. People are storytelling machines. We create scenarios in our heads. Our entire lives are grounded on the fact that we have told ourselves a story that we believe about what's true and what's not true, right? The same thing can happen in your campaign. What kind of story do you want to tell? You know the problems you're solving. You know how to solve them. Let's tell that story in a way that grabs attention and connects on a deeper level. Don't just tell us, show us. Take us on that journey with a compelling narrative. And to assist us on that storytelling journey, we need to use strong and clear imagery. This isn't art class or an experimental film. You only have a few milliseconds to grab attention. And then once you grab attention, you need to keep attention by using strong imagery. And once you have that attention, it needs to be impactful and clear throughout the rest of the piece. You have to clearly communicate what it is you're trying to say. Be mindful of the composition, which is how basically the subject is framed up inside of your frame. Be mindful of eye line and eyesight and how the subject perhaps is blinking and the facial expressions. They can do some funny things. Be mindful of your background. Be mindful of props. Be mindful of really all the little details in the frame. Be mindful of the lighting and the negative space in the frame. Be mindful of the color. This is just a short list. Just be mindful of these things, but make sure there's nothing in the way and that things are clear. My best piece of advice to this is really not to be too clever, but to keep things simple and to communicate clearly. My next tip is to really just pay attention to your color palette and your typography. Some people get this confused with quote unquote branding. It's part of your branding, but it really is just a color palette. It really is just typography. It really is just sort of a visual identity of how we connect with the campaign. So why does a color palette matter? Well, certain colors can actually evoke certain emotions. We have a sort of cultural subconscious when it comes to certain colors. So we want to be mindful of those things when we apply it to our campaign. For example, red can communicate things like passion, love, urgency. Blue can evoke emotions like stability, trust, tranquility, and it's obviously associated with a political party, so you want to be mindful of those things as well. But don't let that scare you from using colors from the opposite party or opposite affiliation, because sometimes you can break pattern recognitions using different color schemes. Again, just be mindful of this as you apply your color palette. To sum that all up, you just want to use your color palette to really influence how you want your campaign to be received. Let's talk about your typography now. That is the word you use on screen, the type set, all that stuff. We want this to be impactful and legible, especially when it comes to campaigns and causes. Readability is always number 1, style is number 2, and almost always stay away from things like handwritten fonts and scripts. Remember, legibility is key. And learn some basic fundamentals of graphic design, hierarchy, and things like that, and that should help you really start communicating using typography. Now, the meshing of type and color, these two things that we've been talking about, putting these things together can really set the tone for your campaign. It can really sort of start separating you from other people in the field. For instance, let's have fun with candidate A. So here's candidate A with some strong, I would say loud typography and bold colors. And here it is with some soft colors and some bad typography. And here's a slightly different approach. Not bad, but perhaps doesn't really fit our candidate. I just wanted to show you these 3 different examples so you can get an idea of how color and typography can influence how people perceive you. Now let's talk about testing and refining. First, I'm gonna talk about refining. It's that 80-20 rule when it comes to creativity. Generally speaking, I would say for most projects, it's that last 20% of the project that's gonna take 80% of your time. This is where you're refining. This is where you're finessing the copy, where you're finessing the color, finessing the imagery, color correcting everything, getting the sound design correct. It's where you're making little tweaks and little things here and there to really take it up a notch. And once you refine it to a certain point, you actually might want to start testing these things, maybe test a few different variations, either with the people in your, creative group, your circle of influence, so to speak, or if you have the money, go ahead and run some ads and see what actually is taking off better. Is it this font versus this font? Just obviously little changes. Is it this sort of imagery versus this sort of imagery? Do we like the candidate smiling more? Or do we like him looking like, like he's hard and tough? Really start playing with that, testing that, and then refine as you go along in your campaign. I know I talked a lot about consistency, and that is still important. But if we don't test and refine, I don't want you to go down the wrong path for too long without adjusting. And if you can make a 10% improvement by changing the candidate's pictures to a smiling picture instead of a straight face picture or a hard line picture, then by all means you want to take that 10% improvement so it can apply to all your creative. But fair warning, don't overhaul everything at the same time. You want to slowly introduce this stuff. So let's just say that a color plays better with an audience, this particular color. Say it's goes from like a green to a slightly bluish green. Maybe just change that one element over time, and then instead of doing like a whole overhaul of the entire campaign. You don't want to break the mind of your audience. You just want to slowly implement these changes because that's better overall for your campaign. The next tip is to stay on top of trends and cultural sensibilities. Now, I know that our industry in the political world is very bad about holding on to things that were popular back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 8 years ago. And we tend to do the same tricks and apply the same cheesy things that we've done for decades. Some people still think that stuff works, more power to them, but you're different, right? So we want to stay on top of trends that are popular right now. You don't want your campaign looking like it's from 2008 or 2014 or even 2020 for that matter. Cultural tastes, trends, they shift all the time, and we want to kind of follow that along. The good news is there are rules, patterns, types of creative that are classic and can withstand the test of time. I suggest you take the time to really study and dive in deep into some classical rules, design rules, video rules, storytelling rules to know what works. I suggest you go and do some research about tried and true types of videos, types of design that really would just withstand the test of time so you don't have to worry about it. But I'm not gonna divulge into that into this video because that's a book. That's a whole thing in its own. But for the sake of this topic of staying relevant and on trend, I suggest you go and get on Pinterest, TikTok, Instagram, and see what's hitting in the creative world right now. Some of the best places to look for current inspiration are up and coming brands. And the reason why I say this is because they're willing to take some creative risks. Generally speaking, these are the only brands that quote unquote you know about, right? And pay attention to what captures your attention. All right, so the final tip, and this comes as no surprise, is shareability. It's a big word. It basically means, can I share this with people? In the age of social media, or should I say, especially in the age of social media, we have to make this shareable. So the one question you should ask yourself is, would I want to share this with my friends and family? Now, this doesn't have to be some viral challenge or you doing something silly to have 15 minutes of fame or using trending audio. It can be as simple as a compelling story, some beautiful visuals, something inspirational. You can be funny. It doesn't have to break the internet, but being just a little bit funny, breaking the scroll just a little bit, getting people to stop and say, that was worth sharing. A great story can be shareable. Inspiration can be shareable. A moment in time can be shareable. Cool fonts and color schemes can even be shareable. Shareability is how marketing actually works. It's how you can get your creative to do the work for you. If you think about it, the last time you bought a product wasn't because of a commercial that you saw. The commercial really just made you aware of the product, but typically what happens is other people see the commercials, somebody actually goes out and buys it eventually, and then they tell you about it. Speaking of shareability, if you found this video helpful, could you share it with one person for me? I would really love that. Also, subscribe if you haven't. I'm gonna have more videos like this in the future, plus some other fun things coming up that I would love to share with you. Also have more videos that might interest you if you wanna click on those and give them a watch. Thanks a lot, everyone. Peace.
Let's go.